Let me introduce you the Be Quiet LightBase 600LX, my #1 choice for a PC case at this point in time. What makes it so appealing and special for me is the fact that it's of course a dual chamber case, but one that can also quickly be converted into a horizontal or inverted layout. Still, there are even more features the LightBase 600LX offers. These include the impressive lighting, a total of 4 high-quality pre-installed fans, the remarkable ARGB and fan hub, as well as a few more little details to which we'll get to a bit later into the video. However, I also noticed a few drawbacks this case comes with, and some of those aren't even that insignificant. Price-wise at $180 to $190 depending on where and when you decide to purchase, the LightBase 600LX resides within the mid-range to high-end price bracket, which given the generally decent out-of-the-box feature set does initially appear somewhat realistic. Despite the aforementioned shortcomings, the LightBase 600LX is currently my first choice and will house my future workstation setup. But does today's Be Quiet case also make sense for you? In addition to the case itself, the package also includes a box of accessories and of course the manual. The aesthetics here are truly well executed and, as I see it, combine elegance and minimalism with a striking LED show, which can, needless to say, be individually adjusted and controlled and of course be disabled altogether by the user. The case is also made available in all white. However, I do find the small gap in between the front and side glass panels slightly bothersome, but that's complaining just for the sake of complaining. The overall build quality is, as is typical for Be Quiet, fairly decent. I couldn't spot anything negative regarding the build quality. Among other things, the 4 pre-installed Lightwings LX 120mm fans deserve praise, with 3 of them on the side being reversed to allow for a more uniform look, a small detail that certainly deserves appreciation. The side panels are attached using standard thumb screws and can be removed easily. The right side panel isn't solid though, instead comes with a ton of ventilation holes across its entire surface and also features small removable rubber feet. On the inside of the side panel is a large dust filter that can easily be unlocked and removed for cleaning. The top cover also allows for removal within a few seconds, giving us great access for fan/radiator installation. It's just a shame that the dust filter for the top panel is apparently not removable. We see the same concept on the bottom of the case. Perfect access is provided here too, and of course the very same permanently installed dust filter. Nonetheless, nothing stands in the way of giving it a proper cleaning. By loosening 2 screws, the front glass panel can also be easily removed, potentially simplifying the installation of radiators. Now, although the LightBase 600LX appears quite spacious, it officially only supports ATX motherboards, with no mention of eATX. However, modern boards with backside connector designs are supported, which have their connections on the back of the board. Cable routing cutouts are plentiful, although only very few. Those located on the very sides come with rubber grommets, which also happen to be quite wobbly and flimsy and tend to drop out of the cutouts too easily during cable routing. Generally speaking, I personally believe dual chamber designs are excellent, but of course that's also a matter of preference. The power supply, 3.5 and 2.5 inch drives, therefore go into the second chamber. Fresh air is usually drawn in from the side and or bottom. As already mentioned, 3 of Be Quiet's own Lightwings LX fans with neat ARGB lighting come pre-installed on the side. Another one is located at the rear. All fans are already pre-connected to the ARGB and PWM fan hub out of the box. This also applies to the case's remaining lighting. I'm referring to the illuminated Be Quiet logo and LED stripes. The 2 hubs are connected to each other. One sits at the top, the other on the bottom. Each hub offering 6 ARGB as well as PWM fan headers. So with 2 of such hubs in place, we have a total of 12 headers in total. Of course, this requires additional power via SATA. Needless to say, the fan speed can be controlled via a single PWM header on the motherboard. And the ARGB lighting can be synchronized with our motherboard as well. Alternatively, we can choose from several colors and effects offered by the case's integrated controller. You can switch between those using the button on the front. The noise levels are quite satisfactory for me when the fan speeds of these Lightwings LX are lowered. They're also capable of moving a decent amount of air, achieving decent airflow. Regarding radiator support, a 360mm one can be mounted to the top. The mounting holes are nicely offset so that they don't interfere with the motherboard and its heatsinks. Up to a 360mm radiator would also be able to fit on the bottom, although there's only support for up to 240mm on the side. Graphics cards with a maximum length of 400mm can be installed, CPU coolers with a max height of 170mm, and a power supply with a max length of 200mm. The PSU is properly padded and even secured with an additional bracket for transportation. I really like that small door in the second chamber because if you think like I do, it offers us a great opportunity to hide away a mess of cables behind it. To install a 3.5-inch HDD, the hard drive cage needs to be unscrewed. A single HDD can be screwed into the cage using included rubber pads. Unfortunately, we cannot install a second 3.5-inch drive out of the box unless we purchase a compatible HDD cage separately. I find that a real shame and am fairly unhappy to see that kind of thing, regardless of how many people actually still want to rely on mechanical hard drives. It's about the principle. Meanwhile, a maximum of two 2.5-inch SSDs are mounted to the aforementioned chamber door. A perfectly good solution, but not measured out all too well. I'd like to point out that an SSD mounted at the bottom could slightly interfere with the connectors of an installed HDD. Despite the unwelcome interference, I would still consider it just about manageable, but that's the exact reason I moved my 2.5-inch SSD to the top. So overall, the manufacturer could have done a better job in this storage compartment with 2.5 and 3.5-inch drives. On the other hand, praise goes out to the front I/O. We have two USB-A 5GB, one USB-C 10GB, and an HD combo audio port. To better showcase the graphics card, the LightBase 600LX also supports vertical GPU installation. I think the implementation is good. You unscrew all the existing slot covers, then insert a special bracket that is part of the scope of delivery, and you're pretty much done. We are also offered some flexibility if you're looking to install a 2, 3, or a monstrous 4-slot GPU. As always, the case does not include any riser cable that would be required for such a setup. I also really like the included GPU holding bracket, an excellent solution. The weight of heavy GPUs is supported well. Furthermore, it's worth noting that it works with both horizontally and vertically installed GPUs. Since we're on this subject, the case also has two other special features. One being the fact the case can be converted into a horizontal layout. To achieve that, you remove the 4 case feet, which can be unlocked by rotating them to the left, then remove the small rubber feet on the non-glass side panel, and finally insert the previously removed case feet in here and lock them in place by rotating them to the right. The versatility of the case is quite remarkable. The Be Quiet logo also happens to be upright. If I had more space on my desk, I sure would consider a horizontal layout like this. Personally, I'm not that fascinated by an inverted layout, something this case does support as well by relocating the case feet one more time. The various options available to us users here are truly outstanding. Now, installing hardware into the LightBase 600LX went smoothly. Apart from the aforementioned shortcomings regarding the 2.5 and 3.5-inch drives, there were no other negative aspects. The case can accommodate all sorts of modern hardware, allowing for some wild configurations to help customize a setup. Of course, certain limitations are to be expected. For instance, you won't be able to install a 420mm radiator. The design and form factor is a bit too compact for that. there's definitely potential for decent cable management if you have the necessary talent and patience, that is. I lack both. Nonetheless, unsightly cable clutter can be easily hidden thanks to the many cable mounting points and the small door. Conclusion. I wouldn't consider today's Be Quiet LightBase 600LX perfection by any means, but it at least meets all of my requirements for my future workstation setup and certainly those of many others. Overall, the case is well thought out, apart from the mentioned minor issues regarding 2.5 and 3.5 inch drives, and offers plenty of different layouts for all kinds of creative configurations. And that is without making any major modifications to the case's stock layout. The appealing aesthetics, the 4 pre-installed fans, and the excellent ARGB and fan hubs leave a very good impression at the end of the day. The price-performance ratio is spot on if you ask me, although of course this is a matter of opinion. The Be Quiet LightBase 600LX definitely deserves a recommendation from me, unless you're heavily dependent on 2.5 inch SSDs and 3.5 inch HDDs. For those, there are better suited alternative cases out there. What would you rate this Be Quiet dual chamber case like? Which pros and cons do you see in it? If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very happy if you gave it a like, but feel free to hit that dislike button if you feel you have to. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and until the next one.